Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review, so hopefully you find this one interesting. This movie is a dark drama from Australia, English language, released in the year 2021, directed by Justin Kurzel, and this film is called Nitram. So Nitram is about the worst massacre in Australian history, where 35 people lost their lives in the Port Arthur tourist attraction in the 90s in Tasmania. And so since then the gun laws were brought in, it divided the nation. A lot of people were for it, a lot of people were against it, but since then we haven't had a massacre, so that was very good. And so this movie is about the gunman I'm not going to name, but the gunman who was responsible for this massacre. It gives you an insight into his upbringing. And so he's known as Nitram. And Nitram is a very different individual, and the more he's pushed back by society, the more frustrated he's getting, and that frustration is eventually going to boil into anger, and he's going to pass a point of no return. So how the film transpires is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Nitram. I was very sceptical coming into this movie. Now the Port Arthur Massacre is something that is very personal for a lot of Australians. I remember that day when I saw the news report of 35 people losing their lives to a gunman. I remember it like it was yesterday. So it was something that had scarred the Australian people, and it's something that really changed the country. The Prime Minister at the time, John Howard, took a massive step of banning these certain guns, and it created an uproar. But I thought it was a very brave move, and one of the bravest moves in Australian political history. So it's definitely a certain time in Australia where we would like to forget it, but we have to remember it to actually learn from it. So the skepticism I had coming into this film is that it was going to glorify the massacre. It was going to be more about the shooting as opposed to anything else. And so I thought, all right, well, that's something that I don't want to see, because it's not something I necessarily want to relive. But there is a lot of element to the Port Arthur Massacre that is unknown, and the gunman and the name of the gunman, that, as I said, I'm not going to name, is definitely something of a myth. Basically, the name is demonised because we never really saw the gunman after this horrible event. He basically disappeared into the prison system. And so if you don't know someone, you don't understand anyone, then that name lingers around as this demonic presence. So the film, I thought, okay, it's going to glorify, but the fact that Justin Kurzel is the director who directed Snowtown, which is a real-life true crime detailing of a serial killer in South Australia, he did it in a way that was very uncomfortable. And so being uncomfortable, that's exactly what it was. It was murder. It was a serial killer. So it's not supposed to be glorifying it. So the fact that I can't watch that movie very much shows how disturbed I was. And so that pays respect to the overall true crime element. So I thought, all right, well, that's anything to go by. Then hopefully Nitram is going to be equally as impressive. And I will say that it's not quite as disturbing as Snowtown, but it's still incredibly disturbing. But what I loved about this film is that it wasn't glorifying anything. It wasn't so much about the massacre. It was about this certain individual and his upbringing. And this upbringing really points the finger at society and how we treat people who are different to us, and that you ostracize someone to a point where they become so angry and they're not getting the help they need, they're not getting the acceptance they need, so they feel as though it's them versus the rest of the world. And when that happens, it can be very dangerous. And so Caleb Landry Jones, who's actually an American actor, played this certain character to absolute perfection. One of the best performances you'll see, and one of the best Australian accents ever put on. I actually thought this actor was Australian, but the fact that he's American shows the versatility in his accent, and basically the character sort of development of this certain individual who has been demonised. It's not condoning what he did, it's not feeling sympathetic for him, but it's giving you a reason as to what happened. And that's a reason that you really have to come to terms with, because in order to prevent something from happening, you need to understand it. And Nitram gives you an understanding in a very damaged character. This main character, I thought, there are likeable qualities to him, but the fact that he was pushed aside by society so much, I thought it created that monster. It's not blaming society completely, but we all have a role to play. And so if you're not going to actually try to come to terms with that demonized name and actually see him as a human being, then unfortunately these things are going to happen. And so the movie is not glorifying anything, it's just giving you a reason as to what's going on, and it actually makes you look at how we treat other people. And so if you don't know someone, it's easy to push them aside and just say they're weird, they're different. But if you actually ignore a problem, then unfortunately it's going to get to a point where it's going to really come to catastrophic consequences. So the acting from the supporting cast, you've got Judy Davis, Essie Davis, Anthony LaPaglia. They're all absolutely fantastic, and it just gives you a raw emotional insight into, as I said, a really damaged individual. He had a lot of heartbreak in his life, and so I thought that was something that you can actually sympathise for. You don't condone what he does, but you can understand what he's doing, and so it's kind of understanding a demonised name in a way where you can relate to them. So they're not much different from us. and if they were actually treated better in the past, maybe we could have avoided this tragedy. And this is unfortunately the way of the world. We're reactive instead of proactive. You actually try to come to terms with things after they've happened. But if you can actually understand something from the last tragedy, then maybe you can prevent the next. And so I thought that was absolutely fantastic and very respectful from Justin Kurzel. So this is a movie that does have a very, very dark atmosphere. What I like about Justin Kurzel, which was very reminiscent of Snowtown, is that he creates suburbia in Australia in a very terrifying way. It's a very monotonous, day-to-day life, and so on the outside it's very boring, but it's something that Australians can really relate to. And so this is something that really is difficult to disconnect yourself from, because this is not a Hollywood film. This is actually something that I actually felt was happening in my backyard. These are people that I could relate to, and so if you can't disconnect yourself from a demonised individual, then this is where you really have to come to terms with things. So Justin Kurzel does an absolutely fantastic job at really putting it in front of your eyes and forcing you to come to terms with, as I said, it's easy to say this gunman was the bad guy, he killed all these people, well, let's just lock him up and just throw away the key. But you have to really come to terms with who that individual was and the reasons as to what created this monster that we saw in the news. And so it's just a movie that does give you a very deep understanding in a way that I thought was almost like a stage play. It's a very dialogue-based film. As I said, it doesn't glorify violence, which is something I was very, very happy with. So it's very respectful for the people who lost their lives. The acting performances were great. It's a showcase of fantastic Australian actors. Caleb Landry Jones. It's a showcase of a very good foreign actor who could pass as Australian because of the amazing accent he puts on. So there are very unhinged qualities to this character, but there were very likeable qualities too, so that's all the more tragic. So if he was actually treated better and he was actually accepted and we tried to learn about people who were different, then who knows, maybe this tragedy wouldn't have occurred. But the real tragedy of it is that we're reactive instead of being proactive, and so that's unfortunately the case as far as a lot of tragedies are concerned, and I definitely think Nitram does a very, very good job at portraying a really horrible event in a very, very respectful way. So it's incredibly disturbing. Again, it's a movie I'm not going to watch very often because it is very, very depressing, but it's just a matter of fact look at suburban life and the consequences of ignoring problems as far as mental illness is concerned and as far as acceptance is concerned. So if it sounds like your kind of thing, go out there and see it. As I said, my only problem with the film is not so much a problem, but it is very dark and disturbing, so it's definitely not something to enjoy. But if you like true crime film and you want to learn a little bit more about a very demonised name, then Nitram comes recommended, and as a result of that, I'm going to give this film 4 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.